Not by a shower of gold coins does contentment arise in sensual pleasures. Of little sweetness and painful are sensual pleasures. Knowing thus, the wise man finds no delight even in heavenly pleasures. The disciple of the fully enlightened one delights in the destruction of craving. Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddha Sakyamuni. The 186th and 187th verses from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Thien Thai in the USA. These words of the Blessed One are not spoken to increase belief alone, but to awaken direct understanding in the heart. They point to a truth that every human being can observe in their own life, the nature of desire, and the possibility of freedom from it. The Buddha teaches that no amount of gold, no accumulation of wealth, no fulfillment of sensual pleasure can bring true contentment. Even if the whole world were filled with gold coins, and even if one could possess all pleasures of sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch, still the heart would not find lasting peace. Because craving does not end by feeding craving. It only grows stronger. Sensual pleasures appear sweet at first, like honey on the tongue. But when examined deeply, they carry hidden pain. They are unstable, changing, and dependent on conditions. What is pleasant in one moment becomes unpleasant in another. What is possessed today may be lost tomorrow. And even while it is possessed, fear of loss quietly arises. The Buddha calls this nature of little sweetness and painful. This is not rejection of life, but clear seeing of reality. A true story preserved in the Buddhist tradition helps illuminate these verses. There was a great lay disciple named Anathapindika, a wealthy householder known for his generosity. He devoted much of his wealth to supporting the Buddha and the monastic community. He built the famous Jetavana monastery, a place where countless beings received teachings that led them toward liberation. Yet toward the end of his life, Anathapindika fell seriously ill. As his body weakened, he no longer clung to wealth, possessions, or even comfort. The medicine of the world could not cure the final condition of impermanence. At that time, the Venerable Sariputta visited him. Sariputta taught him not to attach to anything conditioned, not even to the idea of self or mine. He guided him to gently release all identification, all grasping, all subtle attachment. In that moment, Anathapindika reflected deeply. He saw clearly that everything he once held dear was subject to change. Wealth, family, reputation, even the body itself could not be controlled. What remained was awareness freed from grasping. It is said that tears flowed from his eyes, not from sorrow, but from the profound realization of truth. He understood that peace does not come from possession, but from letting go. This is the living meaning of the Buddha's words. Contentment is not born from gold, nor from sensual enjoyment, but from the extinction of craving. Even heavenly pleasures, the Buddha says, are not the final refuge for the wise. For even celestial joy is still conditioned. It arises and passes away. It is still within the cycle of change. The wise one, seeing this clearly, does not cling even to the highest pleasure. Instead, he turns inward toward freedom itself. Freedom in the Dhamma is not a place. It is not an object. It is the ending of grasping. When craving ends, suffering ends. When desire is extinguished, peace appears naturally, like water becoming still when the wind stops. The disciple of the fully enlightened one does not chase endlessly after satisfaction in the world. Instead, they cultivate understanding, mindfulness, and wisdom. They observe desire when it arises, and they do not blindly follow it. In this way, craving slowly loses its power. This is not suppression. It is clarity. It is seeing clearly that fire burns, and therefore no longer putting one's hand into it. The Buddha's teaching is gentle but direct. It does not condemn pleasure, but it reveals its limitation. It does not reject life, but it reveals how attachment to life creates suffering. When the mind understands this deeply, it begins to rest. It no longer runs outward seeking fulfillment in unstable things. It begins to turn inward toward the peace that is already present when grasping stops. A person may live surrounded by comfort, having food, shelter, relationships, and success, yet still feel a quiet dissatisfaction that cannot be named easily. This is because sensual pleasure never fully satisfies the heart. It only delays dissatisfaction temporarily, Like drinking salt water, the more one consumes it, the stronger the thirst becomes. The Buddha described this clearly when he said that sensual pleasures are of little sweetness and bring pain. The sweetness is momentary, but the consequences of craving extend far beyond the moment. In daily life, this truth can be observed in simple ways. A person desires a new possession, believing it will bring happiness. When it is obtained, there is excitement, a brief satisfaction, and then the mind quickly adjusts and begins searching again. This cycle repeats endlessly. The object changes, but the pattern remains the same. The craving mind is never fully satisfied because its nature is movement, not rest. The Dhamma invites us to observe this cycle without judgment, not to reject life, but to understand it clearly. When understanding arises, the grip of craving naturally weakens. It is not forced. It is seen through. In the story of the great benefactor Anathapindika, this truth became even more profound as his life approached its final stage. Having spent much of his life supporting the monastic community, he was deeply familiar with generosity and virtue. Yet at the time of his illness, even his accumulated merit and good deeds were not things he could cling to as self. The body weakened, sensations changed, and mental formations became uncertain. When the Venerable Sariputta instructed him to let go of all that is conditioned, the teaching was not merely philosophical. It was direct guidance into liberation. Sariputta did not encourage him to cling to merit, wealth, or identity as a benefactor. Instead, he pointed to the impermanent nature of all conditioned phenomena. Whatever arises also passes away. Whatever is possessed is also lost. Whatever is known is also changing. As Anathapindika reflected, he began to see that even the idea of I am the giver, or I have done good, was still a subtle form of attachment. These thoughts, though wholesome in worldly terms, still carried a sense of identity. And identity itself is a root of suffering when it is clung to as fixed and permanent. In that deep reflection, the mind began to soften. It is said that a profound peace emerged, not because pain disappeared, but because resistance to impermanence weakened. Even heavenly pleasures, as mentioned in the verse, are not ultimate refuge. This is an important teaching because it shows that even refined and elevated states of happiness are still within the realm of impermanence. A person may imagine that if earthly pleasures are unsatisfying, then heavenly pleasures might finally bring completion. But the Buddha gently corrects this view. Any state that arises due to conditions must also dissolve when conditions change. Thus, the wise one does not become intoxicated even with subtle or elevated happiness. Instead, wisdom develops a steady awareness that observes all experiences as passing phenomena. Joy arises and fades. Pain arises and fades. Gain and loss, praise and blame, success and failure, all follow the same nature. They arise, remain briefly, and pass away. When this understanding matures, the mind begins to rest in a different kind of happiness. It is not dependent on objects. It is not created by stimulation. It is the peace that comes from non-grasping. This is what the Buddha refers to when speaking of the disciple who delights in the destruction of craving. At first hearing, this may sound like rejection or loss. But in truth, it is the removal of the root of suffering itself. Craving is not a small thing. It is the force that drives repeated dissatisfaction. It is what causes the mind to constantly reach outward, never settling into clarity. When craving is seen clearly, it begins to lose its authority. The mind no longer believes every desire it generates. Instead, desire is observed as a passing mental formation. It arises due to causes, and it passes away when not fed. In modern life, this teaching is especially relevant. Human beings are surrounded by constant stimulation. Images, sounds, and ideas continuously encourage desire. Without awareness, the mind becomes restless, always comparing, always seeking, always moving. Even rest becomes difficult because the mind is conditioned to chase stimulation. Yet the Buddha's teaching remains gentle and accessible even in this environment. It does not require withdrawal from life. It requires understanding within life. When eating, one knows eating. When seeing, one knows seeing. When desire arises, one knows desire. In this simple awareness, space appears. And in that space, freedom becomes possible. The destruction of craving is not a violent act. It is the natural fading of something that is no longer nourished. Just as a fire goes out when no fuel is added, craving ends when it is no longer fed by ignorance. The disciple of the Buddha therefore cultivates mindfulness and wisdom not as abstract practices, but as living awareness in every moment. Over time, this changes the entire relationship with experience. Life is still lived, but without being bound to it. This is the heart of the teaching in these verses. Not rejection of the world, but liberation within the world. Not suppression of experience, but clear understanding of its nature. And through this understanding, the heart becomes lighter, freer, and more at peace, not because life becomes perfect, but because attachment to imperfection dissolves. The Blessed One taught that suffering does not arise merely because the world changes. The deeper cause of suffering is that the mind wants what changes to remain unchanged. It wants pleasure to last forever. It wants youth to remain youthful. It wants health to remain healthy. It wants loved ones to remain exactly as they are. Because it struggles against reality, dissatisfaction grows. Therefore, the Buddha did not merely teach people to seek pleasant experiences. He taught them to understand the nature of experience itself. When a child is young, many dreams arise. A person seeks education, success, relationships, possessions, recognition, and security. Each achievement may bring joy for a period of time. Yet after the excitement fades, the mind begins searching again. Another goal appears. Another desire emerges. Another hope takes shape. The pattern continues. Years pass. The objects change, but the restless movement of craving remains the same. This is why the Buddha described sensual pleasures as having little sweetness. The sweetness exists, but it is limited. It does not possess the power to satisfy the deepest longing of the heart. Human beings often believe that one more achievement, one more possession, one more success. The Buddha observed this not through speculation, but through direct knowledge of the human condition. Imagine a traveler crossing a vast desert. In the distance, the traveler sees what appears to be water. Filled with hope, the traveler moves toward it. Yet as the traveler approaches, the appearance disappears. Another image appears farther away. Again the traveler follows. Again the image vanishes. This pursuit continues endlessly. The problem is not that the traveler lacks effort. The problem is that the traveler is chasing a mirage. In a similar way, craving continually promises lasting satisfaction through temporary conditions. But because those conditions are impermanent, the promise can never be fulfilled completely. The Buddha's wisdom is not pessimistic. It is compassionate. He reveals the problem because he also reveals the solution. If lasting happiness cannot be found through clinging, then perhaps happiness can be found through letting go. If dissatisfaction comes from craving, perhaps peace can arise when craving ends. This is the direction of the path. Many people fear the idea of letting go because they misunderstand it. They imagine that letting go means losing everything valuable. They think it means becoming indifferent or emotionless. But true letting go is not the rejection of life. It is freedom from bondage. A person may hold a flower gently without crushing it. In the same way, one may appreciate life's blessings without clinging to them. One may love without possessiveness. One may serve without attachment to results. One may enjoy without becoming enslaved by enjoyment. The Buddha himself lived as the perfect example of this freedom. Before his enlightenment, he possessed many advantages. As Prince Siddhartha, he lived amid luxury and comfort. Beautiful gardens surrounded him. Fine clothing adorned him. Music entertained him. Servants attended him. Every effort was made to protect him from unpleasant realities. Yet despite these favorable conditions, his heart remained unsatisfied. Something deeper called to him. When he encountered old age, sickness, and death, he saw a truth that no wealth could conceal. Every being is subject to these realities. No amount of pleasure can prevent them. No possession can buy freedom from impermanence. Seeing this clearly, he understood that worldly satisfaction could never provide complete security. Therefore, he left behind privilege and comfort to seek a deeper liberation. His journey eventually led to awakening beneath the Bodhi tree. There he discovered the cessation of craving. There he realized the peace beyond attachment. There he became the fully enlightened one, teaching countless beings the path to freedom. The disciple who follows the Buddha's path gradually develops the same understanding. At first, the mind may still be strongly attracted to sensual pleasure. This is natural. Craving has been cultivated for a long time. Habits do not disappear immediately. Yet, through mindfulness, wisdom begins to shine. A person starts noticing the arising of desire. Instead of automatically following it, they pause and observe. Perhaps a desire for praise appears. The mind wants approval from others. It wants recognition. It wants to be admired. If awareness is absent, the person may become controlled by this desire. Happiness rises when praise is received. Sadness appears when criticism arrives. The mind becomes dependent upon the opinions of others. But if mindfulness is present, something different occurs. The desire is seen as a mental event. It is recognized as a passing formation rather than an ultimate truth. The person no longer needs to obey it. Freedom begins in that moment of seeing. The same principle applies to anger. Often, anger arises because desire has been obstructed. Something did not happen according to one's wishes. Expectations were disappointed. The mind reacts with resistance. Yet when wisdom observes the situation, anger loses some of its force. One realizes that both the situation and the emotional reaction are impermanent. Neither can remain forever. This understanding creates space for patience and compassion. The Buddha repeatedly encouraged his disciples to contemplate impermanence. This contemplation is not intended to create sadness. Rather, it creates clarity. When we understand that all things change, we stop demanding permanence from an impermanent world. We begin to align ourselves with reality instead of struggling against it. Consider the changing seasons. Spring arrives and flowers bloom. Summer follows with warmth and growth. Autumn brings transformation. Winter arrives with stillness. No season remains forever. If a person demanded that spring never end, suffering would arise. Yet when one understands the natural rhythm of change, there is acceptance. Each season is appreciated without clinging. Human life follows a similar pattern. Childhood changes into adulthood. Adulthood changes into old age. Health changes into illness. Meeting changes into separation. Birth leads eventually to death. These realities are not punishments. They are the natural unfolding of conditioned existence. Because the Buddha understood this deeply, he pointed beyond conditioned existence toward liberation. He taught that while external conditions cannot be permanently controlled, the relationship to those conditions can be transformed. Through wisdom, attachment weakens. Through mindfulness, craving is understood. Through ethical conduct, the heart becomes purified. Through meditation, the mind becomes calm and stable. Through insight, liberation becomes possible. Many practitioners discover that as craving decreases, unexpected happiness appears. This happiness is quieter than excitement. It is steadier than pleasure. It does not depend upon favorable circumstances. It emerges from inner freedom. A person sitting peacefully beneath a tree may experience greater contentment than another surrounded by luxury. Why? Because contentment is not determined by possessions. It is determined by the condition of the heart. A heart free from craving experiences abundance even with little. A heart ruled by craving experiences poverty even amid great wealth. This is one of the profound paradoxes of the Dhamma. The world often teaches that more acquisition leads to more happiness. The Buddha teaches that freedom from attachment leads to peace. The world encourages endless pursuit. The Buddha encourages understanding. The world seeks fulfillment through accumulation. The Buddha reveals fulfillment through release. As understanding deepens, gratitude naturally arises. One becomes grateful for simple things. A breath, a moment of kindness, an opportunity to practice, a chance to hear the Dhamma. Gratitude softens the tendency to constantly seek more. It reminds the heart of what is already present. The wise practitioner therefore learns to live with simplicity. Simplicity does not necessarily mean possessing few things. It means possessing things without being possessed by them. It means using conditions wisely without becoming dependent upon them for identity or happiness. This attitude creates tremendous freedom. Success can be enjoyed without arrogance. Failure can be endured without despair. Gain can be appreciated without greed. Loss can be faced without collapse. Praise can be received without intoxication. Criticism can be heard without hatred. The the mind gradually becomes balanced. The Buddha described this balance as a precious treasure. A balanced mind remains steady amid changing circumstances. It does not become excessively elated when pleasant experiences arise. It does not become overwhelmed when difficulties appear. It understands that all experiences are transient. When practitioners cultivate this wisdom consistently, they begin to taste the peace described in the Dhammapada. The heart no longer runs endlessly after satisfaction. It begins resting in awareness itself. Craving loses its urgency. Desire loses its command. Fear loses much of its power. This does not happen all at once. The path unfolds gradually. Just as a river slowly shapes a valley through continuous flow, the practice of mindfulness gradually transforms the heart. Day by day, attachment weakens. Day by day, understanding grows. Day by day, freedom becomes more natural. The disciple of the fully enlightened one therefore continues practicing with patience. There is no need for haste. There is no need for discouragement. Every moment of awareness is valuable. Every act of kindness supports the path. Every effort to understand suffering contributes to liberation. The Buddha's teaching remains as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Human technology has changed. Human societies have changed. Yet the nature of craving remains the same. The search for lasting happiness through impermanent things continues. Therefore, the medicine offered by the Buddha remains profoundly beneficial. When we remember these verses, we are reminded that true contentment cannot be purchased, accumulated, inherited, or possessed. It arises through wisdom. It blossoms through understanding. It matures through letting go. And it reaches fulfillment in the complete destruction of craving. Thus, the practitioner walks the noble path with confidence, not because every difficulty has disappeared, but because the direction is clear. The path leads away from bondage and toward freedom. It leads away from confusion and toward wisdom. It leads away from craving and toward peace. Step by step, the heart moves closer to liberation, discovering that the greatest treasure is not found in the world of possessions, but in the awakened freedom of the mind. Nama Amitabha blessed to all. I hope to bring this merit towards all, disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Please click like, share, and subscribe to help me grow my YouTube channel. Thanks you for watching my video.